This is just a short video I'm making on how to assess what I've been teaching in class. The class that I teach is weather and climate, so I'm just going to be talking about a specific set of facts that I expect my students to know. If I can figure out how to do this. Of course, the tried and true is straight regurgitation of facts. Lists the four types of surface fronts you might see on a surface weather analysis. I have problems with this because, one, it takes a long time to grade. It can't be an automatic grade. Grading is done in Blackboard, which I find very handy for my time management. And another one is, how long will the students remember this kind of thing? If they're just cramming the information in and then forgetting it as soon as the test is taken. I'd like my students to remember things. So I try not to do that kind of simple regurgitation. Here we have one where there's a little bit more knowledge is needed. So as a cold front passes through Madison in late November, what kind of air mass is most likely incoming? So they're relating the passage of the front to what's going on, and this is probably something they've also experienced in their lifetimes. I like this. This can be automatically graded in Blackboard. And then we have the four air mass types there. Again, relating the front to the air mass that it's replacing, or the air mass that's behind the front. Typically, we want to talk about the air mass that's coming in. So in this one, they have more knowledge than just they have to have done more than just the remote memorization, the rote memorization of things, of terms. Again, this is something that's easier to grade in Blackboard. It's more likely to be remembered. The factors applied to a process that they might have experienced and remembered. If thunderstorms are approaching your station in the middle of the night in spring, what type of surface front is most likely approaching you? And there are the four choices, and hopefully they would choose the correct choice, which if you took my class you would know was a warm front. There are other ways to, so this is just facts. Meteorology is full of symbols. So this is doing something that might be more attuned to someone who sees things visually. So maybe not just the bland recitation of facts, but they have seen pictures, they've seen the evolution of the pictures, and that has some kind of resonance in their understanding of what's going on with the weather. So here we have on the maps on the next page, draw where the surface fronts would be, add in CP where the continental polar air likely sits, and an MT where the maritime tropical air sits. I can simplify this question by adding what the fronts look like. That might be a little visual stimulus for the student. Or I could make it a harder one where they have to remember what the fronts look like, depending on what I want to test them on. So here we have a map where we have winds drawn, highs and low pressure systems, and hopefully they would produce something like this. Again, this is going to be timely too. This is going to be a timely grading process. I'm always thinking about that when I'm making up assessments. How much time do I have to grade it? How much do I want to read? How much wiggle room will this test question introduce? So here we have just an answer, and I could ask them, if you didn't get this, what went wrong. I might do that if I was having a one-to-one interaction with them after the test. I think that would be a difficult test question to say, okay, you've done it, here's the answer, what'd you do wrong? Because then they're just going to change what they did. Now, how might I have taught this information? Well, I can give the students a list of things to read. So I would have this in a PowerPoint presentation, and there would be silence, as you're just about to have, and I want you to read this. Okay, that was about 10 minutes. I'm sure you've absorbed all that information. You know exactly what cold, warm, stationary, and occluded fronts are, and you're ready to be tested on them, maybe. A better way to do that would be to have something where I'd read it to, and I'd say there are four types of fronts on a weather map. A cold front is at the leading edge of advancing cold air. A warm front is at the leading edge of advancing warm air. A stationary front is between two air masses of different temperatures. Neither cold nor warm air is advancing. And an occluded front is a special kind of front. It's a surface reflection of a front at upper levels that accompanies a decaying storm system. So you might not actually have a big temperature gradient, temperature change as the front goes through, as you typically do with a cold front or a warm front. So maybe I've given you a little bit more information there, and maybe the student will have learned a little bit more. I can add pictures, do it visually. Say the blue one on the left, this with the blue barbs is a cold front. The red one is a warm front. The purple one is an occluded front, and the one with both warm and cold, both red and blue, is a stationary front. And you'll notice the barbs are typically on one side. That's the side that the front is moving toward. So the stationary front there with both the barbs and the half moons on them, it's not moving because the barbs are on either side. So there are 4 types of fronts on a weather map. Better to do it visually like this, where there's parts of a whole. We have the evolution of a low pressure system from developing to mature to dissipating. So the stages of the development of that extratropical cyclone. You see how the warm front and the cold front are in there and how they evolve with time, and eventually you have an occluded front. So again, that's more of a system-wide. You have the facts, but they're being applied to a system. And it's been in my experience, both as a learner and as a teacher, that if you have the facts, well, that's all well and good. But if you can apply the facts to some kind of system, it leads to much better understanding. So on this blank sheet of paper with the supplied colored pencils, draw a strong extratropical cyclone with attached fronts. That might be a way to really see exactly what the students have learned. Again, this is not going to be something that's easy to grade, but I think it's important to do it if you are able to. I teach mostly online, so if I were to do this, I would have a variety of different choices for them to make. They wouldn't actually be doing the drawing. And I think that's a shortcoming of online teaching, because you cannot involve students' hands in drawing things, and that creation of something that really helps them, that really helps the teacher understand exactly what they have learned. Or describe in words how fronts relate to a surface extratropical cyclone and to a surface tropical cyclone. Again, something to be difficult, very difficult to grade, because a lot of students are not good writers. So their ideas and facts will not be clear. That's just a brief summary of how I sometimes assess some of the facts that I give the students in weather and climate. Thank you for listening.